right, my friends. Appreciate you joining me today. JR Dukes at your service. Just hit the buttons to make everything go live. So let me know if you have any trouble hearing me. Want to say a quick hello to our friends on the X platform. Looks like everything's coming in. And of course, hello to YouTube world out there and our friend on Twitch that will be piling in here in just a minute. So appreciate everybody being with me today. We're going to talk about current events that are going on right now in our world. Once again, if you have any trouble with volume or any questions, definitely put it in the chat below. I just typed in. If you wouldn't mind doing so, please go ahead, introduce yourself, let us know who you are and where you are from. It's always good to see people from all over the world, whether you're watching this live with us now or if you watch it later on. We're technically just starting up just a couple minutes earlier than what I advertised, but we have a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of interesting things going on today, and I can't wait to get started on it. One other thing, too, is if you're so inclined to where you would like to join the conversation, if you like to call in and ask a question without appearing on video, or if you like to actually appear on video right here with me right now, simply hit the link that I just put in the chat box, and I'd be happy to get you joining in on part of the conversation. All right, so I am JR Dukes. I'm your host. Thanks for being here with me. This is the home, the big time home of the free-minded, as I like to call all of you, my friends out there. If you are new to the channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber, thanks for being here. We're all part of one big family, and of course, American Nana is always in the house, and thank you for being here, American Nana. Hello from beautiful West Virginia. Appalachia. It is beautiful up there, especially this time of year with all the trees changing colors. I used to love going up there to the Smoky Mountains, Smoky Mountain Park, right in between Tennessee and South Carolina, where that Cherokee Nation casino and the hotels and all the other stuff is. It's beautiful up there. Definitely beautiful, beautiful country. We have a beautiful country, ladies and gentlemen. We are so blessed to be living here in the United States of America. We have so much to be grateful for. We just had an election, and of course, for most of us, our candidate won. We feel so much better about our country as far as being safe and being put back on the correct path that we all need to be on. So it is definitely a good time when you're winning. There's no doubt about that, right? It's always that way. So, okay, we're going to start diving into it. I got a lot, like I said, I want to talk about today. Lots going on in the news. Y'all may have seen President Donald Trump elect out there in Madison Square Garden this weekend. He was received as the pop culture phenomenon that he has turned into. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in just a second. I'm also going to be talking about the big news of the day, MSNBC, the Morning Joe. That has to do with the thumbnail y'all might have already seen, where I'm calling it Cool the Mark. And I'm going to explain that in just a minute. It's kind of got an interesting backside story with that. But the really fantastic news is you have essentially, I call it a mea culpa. You have a lot of these legacy news, and let's be straight up about it. There's nothing more left wing, at least in my opinion, than probably Morning Joe, MSNBC. And I didn't really realize if that's actually his wife that he is on air with. I knew they had a friendship or were together for many years, but at any rate, I wasn't quite clear about that because, to be honest with you, normally when I listen to them, it's kind of painful when you have to sit there and listen to that garbage that comes out of their mouth. I mean, they're just always spewing such nonsense. It just makes me want to sometimes, well, let's just put it this way. I don't want to listen to them unless I absolutely have to, or if there's something so outrageous someone brings to my attention that we have to talk about it. But they were just down at Mar-a-Lago. There's some controversy as to whether or not they actually contacted Donald Trump or Donald Trump contacted them. The way they spin it is that they reached out to Donald Trump. I'm not sure exactly where everything is going to fall out. It kind of depends on what story you believe. But the bottom line is they did meet with President-elect Donald Trump, and we're going to talk about that here going forward right now. So at any rate, without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into this. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Be sure to subscribe if you have not done so already. And on the X platform, of course, hit the heart and subscribe. It is definitely appreciated. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start drilling down on what I got for us today. Let's take a look first as part of the Dukes feed. We're going to check out Donald Trump's Truth Social, one of my personal favorite platforms. And as we talked about a minute ago, Donald Trump was at Madison Square Garden, and he received what could only be described, in my opinion, as a rock star. And we'll take a look at that. I'm going to blow it up nice and big. I'll take a look at it together. So you have the actual champion that was winning this cage match. He climbs over the fence, and he presents President Donald Trump with his belt. And there he is right there. Sometimes I'm muted, if you notice, just because I want to make sure we don't violate any type of copyright. But you can see him bending over and essentially telling Donald Trump, "Thanks for being here, and I thank the world of you. Please accept my belt as my gift to you." And of course, the president was very gracious and did just that. So it was really cool to see. There was a lot of people there, as far as Elon Musk and a lot of the members of his cabinet, or I should say cabinet elect. So that was pretty cool to see when he walked out on stage. I mean, it was nothing short of rock star treatment. Also, Tim Fenton, I don't know if y'all know him or not, but this is his information right here, just at Tom Fenton on the on Truth Social, I should say. He is the guy that is the founding person. I think he actually operates Judicial Watch is the name of his organization, and they do a lot of great work all over the United States. They stand up for free speech, conservative principles, and they do a lot. So if you're interested, be sure to check out their webpage. This guy's a great guy. President, Judicial Watch, says these are my personal views only. He has a book, so he is a best-selling author. And what was really cool about this post is that Donald Trump confirmed this post with this big true. You see this big true right here, Donald J. Trump. True. Tom Fenton said November 8th, good news reports are coming in that at the real Donald Trump administration prepared to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden invasion through a mass deportation program. Amen. And it's really nice of Donald Trump to verify this with a nice big truth. So if you haven't heard that, good news, Donald Trump is keeping another campaign promise by essentially saying he is prepared to declare an emergency and use the law that's already in place to actually have our military assist with rounding up individuals that are up to no good. We're talking about the gang members, people that are criminals. Effectively, anybody that's in the country illegally is technically subject to this. So we'll just have to see where this goes. But I think this is definitely a good first step. And I'm sure that they'll do it humanely, appropriately. But when it comes to some of these gang members, these people that are violent, like that Lincoln Riley trial, we have a video on that coming up here in a little bit, but it was disclosed in court today. Now get this, this is absolutely outrageous. In court today, it turned out that the Biden-Harris administration paid for his flight into the country. Instead of coming across the border with that app that they have put out there, what they have been doing is secretly setting up quick arrangements for people to meet, take a government-paid plane flight to wherever the government chooses to send these individuals. And that's exactly what he did and admitted to in court, or one of the witnesses on the stand made that clear, that that's exactly how he got into the country. Is that not outrageous? Just kind of really burns me. And I can imagine how that poor girl's parents feel about this whole thing. And I don't want to get too graphic about it, but she was the college student that was attacked, I should say allegedly attacked, by this Venezuelan gang member who's currently on trial for her murder. And the bottom line is she was out jogging. She had some kind of band, one of those exercise watch bands, and they were able to understand exactly what the timeline of events were simply by getting the information off that watch. For example, they know exactly when her heart stopped, if you can believe that. Isn't that nuts? Just extremely tragic and crazy. All right, moving on with Donald Trump here. He said, great job by Senator Mark Mullen of the great state of Oklahoma in a wonderful interview with Trey Gowdy on Fox News. We all know Trey on Fox News. I love Oklahoma, where I was the only person to win all 77 out of 77 districts. Good job. I did it 3 consecutive times. Ronald Reagan was second and winning 56 districts. Mark Wayne, a great fighter, is taking really good care of that very special state. And I am here watching over it. Make America Great Again. MAGA. What a great week this has been. Perhaps the most successful election results in Republican Party history. So Donald Trump is definitely feeling good and living high right now. 19 hours ago, we're coming up on the fifth year anniversary of COVID. And if you recall, under President Trump's leadership, we had incredible public health policies. President Trump's unparalleled creation of Operation Warp Speed was one like we've never seen before. And then finally, he also is coming out very quickly with his cabinet picks. And one of the ones he recently brought to bear here on True Social was that he's pleased to announce Commissioner Brandon Carr will be the chairman of the Federal Reserve, which of course is the FCC. So these are all very important people that are going to be taking very important positions in the administration. He also says here that great job, Fox News, by GOPAC chairman David Avella. He was a clear and concise statement what the Republican Party must do to maintain this great momentum. And then my favorite story that was on here today. This is great. Y'all remember that poll that came out the weekend before the election. So we're talking the Sunday before last Tuesday. They were talking about this Ann Seltzer. She's a pollster. She's a lady that takes polls. And they were making a big hoop-de-doo with that. She's this great gold standard. That's exactly what they said, because I clearly remember it's the gold standard of polling, this pollster here. And she, of course, lives in Iowa with the Des Moines Register. And she came out with this very surprising poll, to put it bluntly, and it allegedly showed that Kamala Harris was whooping Donald Trump big time in a poll that she just took that weekend. And of course, you had the liberal woke, especially on CNN and MSNBC, attacking Donald Trump and other Republicans that were saying this poll at best is an outlier, and there's no way that Kamala Harris was winning in Iowa. But that's what she said. She said she's very highly credentialed. She is a professional pollster. And again, she's the gold standard, ladies and gentlemen. You can't question her. She's the gold standard. And that was all over CNN all weekend long. Well, as it turns out, she was extremely wrong. I think she was off by just a mere 13 percentage points for this gold standard pollster. It says here by Donald Trump, a totally fake poll that caused great distrust and uncertainty at a very critical time. She knew exactly what she was doing. Thank you to the great people of Iowa for giving me such a record-breaking vote, despite possible election fraud by Ann Seltzer and the now discredited paper for which she works, aka the Des Moines Register. A full investigation is called for, and I totally agree. And it says here that pollster Ann Seltzer is ending election polling, moving to other ventures and opportunities. You think? Yeah, I think I would too. How embarrassing, right? Extremely embarrassing. Just FYI, here's some pictures from that Madison Square Garden event that took place this weekend. Was fantastic. A very good time for all is probably the best way to put a big caption on that there. All right, let's take a peek. American Anna. Am worried about the situation in Russia and Ukraine. And yeah, we all are, but I have some interesting points that I want to point out about that here in just a little bit. So make sure you stay tuned, American Anna. We are going to talk about the Ukraine situation, I promise. So don't worry, we will get to it. Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to the next screen that we got. I got a few interesting things for us to just quickly chat about, and then we're going to jump into what I was talking about with MSNBC. I can't wait to get to it. It's one of them feel-good stories. At least it is. At least it is for me. It makes me feel good. I can assure you that. Probably makes you feel good too. All right. Interestingly enough, we all remember that disastrous. Matter of fact, I want to show you the video on this first. I want to just return everybody to, what was it, 3 years ago, if you will, where you had the Biden administration have this. I think the best word I could use for it is horrendous, absolutely horrendous pullout, where President Joe Biden ended the war that is currently going on over in Afghanistan. Here, as you can see, is U.S. pulls out of Afghanistan after massive airlift, ending America's longest war. This is published by France 24, so this is a European news agency. But let's just listen for a second, so you can remember a little trip down memory lane. It's not necessarily a good memory, but memory lane just the same. And let's talk about it here. Just
the C-17 cargo jet fleeing their country
from
and
Afghanistan.
Taliban rule. Thousands more swarming Hamid Karzai International Airport, desperately trying to escape. An American soldier giving water to dehydrated children. Waiting.
You'll remember then people
giving water to dehydrated children.
Let me show you that airplane. Remember people pulling on that airplane right there?
Forming.
And they were literally falling off as it was taken off. As that airplane was taken off, you can see bodies falling from the airplane because people were so desperate to get out of Afghanistan. It was such a chaotic, unprofessional, uncalled for, I don't know what the word is that would properly fit it, but it was just clearly an abomination. Biden was really proud of himself and said that he intended to end the war, and he ended the war. And that is exactly what he did, ladies and gentlemen. But unfortunately, he didn't do it correctly, and it doesn't mean we're not going to be back there. And on top of that, I believe there was 13 men and women of the United States Armed Forces that were killed in a bombing attack there, if y'all remember that. So I believe it was 13 is the correct amount. But you had all these people that were needlessly killed. These were troops that were serving proudly in the United States Armed Forces. And because of Biden's incompetence, this is exactly what ensued. It just extremely sad at a minimum. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Donald Trump had to say about this today. And I think you'll enjoy this because I don't know why I didn't think about this ahead of time, because I'm not surprised, because Donald Trump has talked about a lot of things. But take a look at this. Trump mulls court-martials in Afghanistan withdrawal. So let's see if this will play here, and we'll listen to it together.
3 years in power after the Biden-Harris disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And here it is, the Taliban, as you can see, showing off the billions of dollars in both U.S. and NATO military equipment that was left behind. Blaine, your reaction. It makes me sick to my stomach to see this.
It makes us all sick to our stomach. And those of us who serve there, Rita, it's just, you can't describe it. You really can't describe, given 20 years of your life, having loss of friends, loss of limbs, the treasure, committing to this thing and having them just cut it like this. But this is what your national security team has brought you, and they're parading in your face. And this is emblematic of the weakness that this national security team, led by Vice President Harris, has brought to the world stage. I'll tell you what I'm doing and what I have been doing since that fateful day in Kabul. I'm still working to try to get Afghans that stood by us and their family members out of Afghanistan, as so many other veterans are, because we believe in honor and integrity. We believe in no one left behind. And there is no honor that is associated with what that administration did. Instead, what they did was they promoted.
That is one of the things that irritate me about this whole situation. In addition to this botched withdrawal from Afghanistan by the Biden-Harris administration, on top of all this, we left behind men and women and their families, frankly, that helped the United States while we were there. It was part of the agreement that if they help us, we would make sure that when everything was said and done, that we brought them to the United States. And unfortunately, the United States reneged on that promise. But it's very, very unfortunate because it undermines the credibility of the United States and will only hurt us in the future. So that's the problem. Let me briefly go through this here. It says President-elect Donald Trump vowed to root out the woke TV generals from the U.S. military brass, and that reportedly might include court-martials for top Biden administration military officials responsible for the deadly Afghanistan withdrawal. On the campaign trail, Trump vowed accountability, and his legal team is weighing potential actions against senior Biden military officers, according to reports. Among the banded about actions included an independent commission to investigate the withdrawal decision-making, execution, and failures of those responsible. The recall of senior officers might access changes as severe as treason, according to the National Pulse. So they're not messing around with this, folks. The officers do have the defense of the following presidential Joe Biden's orders, however. Yeah, I could see that as a defense. If Joe Biden ordered something to be done contrary to the advice of his top military brass, I'm not sure how well treason's going to work, but I would definitely look into exactly what happened. Because guess what? All of these assets that were over there, billions of dollars worth of assets, are now in the hands of the Taliban. We gave away that airbase. I think it encompasses something like 30 miles worth of air tracks and landing strips in that part of the region. And here's probably one of the biggest insulting things about it. It's right in the backyard of China. It could have been something the United States could have used in the event of some type of clash, some type of war, frankly, with China. Biden just gave that away. Unbelievable. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Matt Flynn is not involved in the transition investigation of using court-martial, according to Flynn's attorney, Mark Zaid, despite sources suggesting otherwise. Trump on the campaign trail has suggested his former chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, could be executed for treason. Of course, there's no love lost between him and Mark Milley. If you remember the published reports, he will destroy the Department of Defense, frankly. He will go in and he will dismiss generals who stand up for the Constitution. Senate Armed Forces Committee, Jack Reed chair, he's the chairman, Jack Reed, who is handling over the gavel, told Reuters. Says Trump has openly stated his desire to fire the woke military. Amen to that, brother. Leaders, as he has rebuked as TV generals, all while notably he has nominated. Well, they're going on to slam the TV chair, or the TV show headed by Pete Hegseth, which I personally love him. I think he's great. But Newsmax is generally a conservative channel. I'm kind of surprised to see them slamming Trump a little bit. But the takeaway, Donald Trump and his transition team are actively looking at pursuing, I don't know if it'd be treason or not, but they're definitely going to take a look at exactly what happened. And if they decide that some type of justice needs to be brought to bear, that is exactly what they intend to do. And amen to that as far as I'm concerned. So, all right, let's get into the heart of what I wanted to at least get into today. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Ukraine, because that's also in the news today and it needs to be discussed. So we're all familiar with our favorite TV duel, the morning host. Apparently they are husband and wife. Let's go ahead and watch a quick clip of exactly what transpired today. And quickly, to give you a heads up, apparently, and this is apparently because it depends on what source you read or what source you believe, the bottom line that can be agreed to is they went to Mar-a-Lago, which of course is the home of President Trump-elect and his wife, Melania Trump. It's a beautiful estate that has been all over the news, especially dealing with that Judge Engoron fiasco, trying to decide if it's worth 18 million or 120 million or whatever the figure was. It was at the heart of one of the alleged fraud allegations brought by the nutty, crazy Attorney General Letitia James out of New York State. But this weekend, apparently, husband and wife duo, Joe Scarborough, and I think her name is Mika, they went at the invitation of Donald Trump to kind of sit down and chat. Now, you may be wondering, on the thumbnail, I said that it's what you call cooling the mark, or to cool the mark. Well, I was taught a long time ago by an attorney friend of mine that mobsters, for example, they used to cool the mark. Now, it's not an exact matching example, but the premise, the takeaway is the same. And that is, if a mobster kind of does something bad against a person or their family, you want to try, or they would try to cool the mark. In other words, you want to bring peace. You want to cool it down. You want to take down the temperature. And that's exactly what was considered one of the best practices of the mob, right? Well, compare that to modern day life here for President Donald Trump. I love this about President Trump. He gets criticized for this all the time, and that is he will sit down with his enemies. He will sit down with dictators. Remember that all over the news? Oh, Donald Trump talks to Putin. Oh, Donald Trump talks to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un or whatever. Well, folks, you got to talk to your enemies. You have to talk to people to bring about compromise, to bring about a solution to a problem. And Donald Trump, in my estimation, has been very professional and very wise to do so. Well, on a much smaller level, he's doing that with the so-called legacy media. He's trying to bring everybody into the fold and cool them down. Instead of having adversaries, he wants to have people that will at least give him the benefit of the doubt and start to talk to him instead of always just negatively talking about him. And I believe that's exactly what happened here with Morning Joe and his wife, because they're always on MSNBC bashing Donald Trump. Now, as a quick side note, I think one of the other things that's clearly going on here is that programs such as MSNBC, you have the other liberal news media outlets like CNN, their ratings are taking a dive, and I mean a huge dive. Some of the published reports has their viewership down 60% during the election. And I think Morning Joe is something like 50% approximately as far as the amount of viewers they have lost. So that is a serious situation and they need to do something about it. And I'm very sure that had something to do with it. Because think of it this way. What are these two going to do if they lose their job? And by the way, there are reports that MSNBC is looking to sell this news division or whatever you want to call it. They're looking to sell it. And I don't necessarily blame them for looking to sell it. But think about this. If these two lose their jobs, these two goofs, these two clowns lose their jobs, what are they going to do? They're going to start a podcast and that's going to replace their income? Well, it didn't work out too well with Don Lemon, did it? I mean, he still is on and off of X and he's always trying to do something or start something, but the takeaway is he's not having much success from what I have been able to find out. And I'm sure these two are going to take a huge pay cut if they end up losing their jobs or they get fired or whatever ends up happening. So it's probably very wise on their part to take Donald Trump's invitation, meet with him at Mar-a-Lago and start to find a way to, I would say, rehash their news program to basically keep the viewership that they have, because let's face it, their viewers are these left woke liberal individuals, right? So they don't want to separate themselves from them. They want to keep them happy and keep them in the fold. But at the same time, they know what they're doing is a losing proposition. They're losing money. They're bleeding money, whatever, however you want to describe it. That's exactly what has happened. So let's go ahead and listen to this for a minute and let's see exactly what they had to say, because it's kind of cute, in my opinion, exactly how they're trying to explain why they went to meet with Donald Trump. And one other note, we're going to look at another video here in a second. There's a lot of people, rightly so, in the liberal media or just the media in general that is really taking these two to task for their hypocrisy. I mean, they were just saying Donald Trump is fascist and that he's essentially an evil man and it's the end of our democracy. And now they're at his home having a personal meeting with him. That would sound and seem very suspect, wouldn't it? All right, without further delay, let's take a look at it.
Okay, so here's where we are. Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show. has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike.
Well, you can tell they're really stretching here, folks. Anything they're really grasping at straws, if you will, trying to find a way to explain this to their viewers. It's obviously something that they are reading from a teleprompter. And in my opinion, they look very uncomfortable trying to explain this. It's almost like a mea culpa moment, but I digress.
We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful. He was upbeat. He seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
Is it not troubling, ladies and gentlemen, is it not troubling that they would even have to explain that question? Why would we go talk to the man who is president-elect of the United States? And they're supposed to be reporters, and she feels the need to explain to their viewers why we would talk to the man that's about to lead the entire world. Just seems kind of odd. Who are their viewers? Are their viewers just a bunch of nuts that are sitting home seething in anger all day? I don't know. Odd to me.
5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as...
Y'all know that election denialism just aggravates me to no end. I just love it that if you disagree with what these people think, you should think you're a denier. It's like you don't even have the ability to think. You're an election denier. You're a climate denier. You're whatever denier. Just extremely rich, isn't it?
Important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
As somebody close to Donald Trump told me this past weekend, this is a president who's not seeking re-election. So maybe, just maybe, now could be the time for both parties to get to work. And I know, given the jarring headlines that we read every day, that may seem like a stretch. But think about this. Of the 150 million votes cast, Donald Trump got 50%. Kamala Harris got about 49%.
Yeah, technically, she got just over 48%. And technically, Donald Trump is over 50%. At the last check, he was at 50.1%. He's the first Republican that I know of to achieve actually 50% plus in the actual popular vote. So that's really a stunning achievement. So I don't want to make sure that goes unaddressed.
So I don't know. Seems to make sense for leaders of both parties to seek common ground, if it's possible at all. And I will tell you, a lot of Democratic leaders we've talked to this past week since the election have told Mika and me it's time for a new approach. And when I say top Democrats, I mean top Democrats.
All right, well, there you have it. What does that sound like to you? That sounds like a mea culpa. It sounds like an about face, an apology. Basically, we were wrong, and how do we explain this to our viewers? This would be they looked like they were in pain, and I think it's very obvious that they were in a lot of pain, and I don't feel sorry for them. I obviously think it's smart that they are making this about face, but they really don't have a choice when you think about it. The fact that Donald Trump called them Friday was extremely fortuitous for them. It was just good luck that and good fortune that he would reach out. And again, so smart of Donald Trump to do this. This is fantastic. He knows, and I have to admit, Joe pointed this out, he knows he is only going to be in office for 4 more years. He's not running for re-election because he's barred by the Constitution to run for more than his second term. So this is it. And he knows he can spend 4 years fighting, 4 years having confrontation, or he can do what Ronald Reagan did. And Ronald Reagan said something to the effect of, you can almost accomplish anything if you don't care who gets credit for it. So he knows that if he can dial some of the rhetoric, some of the hostility back, and he can find a way to work with the Democrats, he may be able to advance more of his agenda that than he otherwise could have advanced. So I think it's really potentially promising. Now, I can't show you what I just showed you and not go ahead and show you how the media, the rest of the legacy media, is having a field day with this visit by Morning Joe. And by the way, one of the cute headlines I said, or that I saw, was not Morning Joe, it was Morning Joe, especially right after the election. Mourning like they lost, like at a funeral type of thing. So a lot of people having a lot of fun with this, as I am definitely having a lot of enjoyment out of. So let's listen to the beginning of this, because they are going to have a good time with it too.
I wanted to get your reaction to the Morning Joe anchors revealing this morning that they just visited President-elect Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Take a quick listen.
Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him
face.
in 7 years.
Abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit.
Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Yeah, so Steve, I believe their visit was on Friday, but they just addressed it with their viewers this morning. What do you make of their visit and why they're deciding to bridge the gap now?
Oh my gosh.
He's having a good time with it, right?
An amazing turn of events that literally anyone who has tracked the career of these two could have seen coming. They're frauds, but honestly, it's not even just that. It's that last part of the shot that you played there, that soundbite about the idea that we're going to do things differently. Okay, I'm on board with that. I think that there should be a little bit of introspection and humility that comes with getting an election and sort of the mood of the country completely wrong. So instead of talking about Donald Trump, we're going to talk with Donald Trump. Well, that is literally the thought process of no one in America, except for people that spend their time in green rooms in DC and New York, or spend their time staring at a TV camera, okay, we got this election completely wrong. What should we do differently? Let's talk to Donald Trump. It's totally insane. How about talking about Donald Trump and his supporters in a way that doesn't alienate more than half the country, or maybe talking to some Donald Trump supporters? No, we got to go to Mar-a-Lago and actually literally talk to Donald Trump. It is so out of touch, so absurd, and I think it's a sign of where things are going to go in that morning show.
I think so too. I think he pretty well hit it on the nose there. You have to see it for what it is. They know that their program is in trouble, and the best that they can do is say something along the lines of, we're going to stop talking about Donald Trump and start talking to Donald Trump. Really? This is supposed to be a major news program, a major news provider. And they have come to the epiphany that, hey, why don't we talk to the guy that's going to be the president of the United States for the next 4 years? Wow. I wonder if they use AI to come up with that. To me, it's just, look, it's just stupid, right? Absolutely stupid on so many levels, and have to do something different. Okay, well, whatever works, I guess, right? That's it just seems like they were in a lot of pain coming to that resolution, but we'll see. Let's listen to one more show commentating. This is The Hill, by the way. They were commenting on the same subject we're talking about. And then we're going to transition and we're going to start making our way to talk about the Ukraine war and discuss that a little bit.
Morning Joe's Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski took a trip to Florida on Friday. You guessed it, they went to kiss the ring at Mar-a-Lago, and they told their audience
Kiss the ring. That's one way to
the
put it.
duo had a personal sit-down with Donald Trump. Let's watch.
Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Fast forward
And we told him
right
so.
now.
It's been 7 years since the two MSNBC anchors spoke to the president-elect, although Joe Scarborough did reach out after the first assassination attempt this summer against Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. So, is this hypocrisy? Let's listen.
For those...
One thing I want to mention before we go any further, I don't know if most of my viewers know this or not, but Joe Scarborough used to be a politician. As a matter of fact, he used to be a Republican politician. And if you go to the wiki page pertaining to Joe Scarborough, it's got a lot of, I would just say, a lot of interesting facts about this man. And I don't have time to get into it right now, but he has a very colorful past, to put it bluntly. Again, just, I find it extremely rich that he used to be a Republican.
Asking why we would go speak to the president-elect
We're going
during
to fast
such
forward through
fraught
this
times,
since we've
especially
seen
between
majority
us.
of that.
Tweets. Trump's victory is so complete. Morning Joe is fully surrendered. And then, some people on the left are making fun of them too. My friend
guy,
Ryan Grimm, who used to co-host the show.
Control their laughter.
Let me find his tweet. He tweeted, I'm not going to be able to find it so quickly. He calling them basically Russian, playing into the Russians. Like, the Never Trump operatives have actually been Republicans all along, making fun of that kind of conspiratorial thinking. I tweeted, I thought it was pretty funny. I tweeted the Avengers gif where Captain America leans into the Hydra people and says, "Hail Hydra," pretending to be one of them.
So as you can see, a lot of people having a good time with Morning Joe and his wife and their mea culpa, going to kiss the ring of Donald Trump. I guess that's one way to explain it, and we'll just have to see where that goes. I definitely think it was a good move, and potentially it can be good for the entire country. And I think it's extremely smart and wise of President Trump elect. So we'll see exactly where that goes, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll stay on top of that subject. And now let's go ahead and pivot for just a second. We got to talk about the news pertaining to Ukraine. If you haven't heard, our current president, Joe Biden, after a long time going back and forth with this, with Zelensky in Ukraine, the government of the United States, aka the Biden-Harris administration, has agreed to allow the Ukrainian military to use the United States missiles inside of Russia. I believe they can go up to 200 miles inside of Russia. Up to this time, the United States has been very direct and very strict by saying, no, you cannot use our missiles inside of Russia. Well, I think what has happened is that recent events such as, I believe it's right at 11 to 12,000 soldiers from North Korea were effectively given to Russia to help them fight and prosecute their war in Ukraine. And in return, I think the North Koreans have received some technology, some drone technology, some different type of military technology. And say that's one of the many things that is so terrible about this war and about what's going on is these policies that we're going to drill down on here in just a second have effectively taken Russia, and it has not put Russia in a corner, if you will. It has pushed Russia into a friendship, a tighter friendship with China, with North Korea, and unfortunately Iran. So you already have the makings of a axis of evil type of friendship, if you will, where they have been pushed into being friends. It's kind of the old adage that the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And again, it's extremely unfortunate that this has happened. And I know that the news media has pretty well told each and every one of us that this is entirely the fault of the evil, evil man called Putin. But what I'm going to explain to you today, it's not that black and white. It's not that simple. Unfortunately, there's no doubt that the Russian leader does some things that are bad. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue that he does not, but you have to understand some of the history about what's going on in that area of the world. And we're going to get into that in just a second. But that's the new news, is that you have Ukraine being given permission to use these weapons inside of Russia, at least 100, 200 miles into Russia. And you got to remember, Russia is huge. It is a huge country. It's the largest country on the face of the earth. It is enormous. But 100, 200 miles is still inside Russia just the same. And I guess I should add that Putin has been very clear that if these weapons were allowed to be used in this capacity, that he would consider the United States or whoever is supplying these weapons to be personally responsible, and essentially the war would be on. But we'll have to see exactly what pans out with this. And in just a minute, I'm going to tell you exactly why I think we're in the situation that we're in. And I'm going to tell you what my opinion is. And then I'm going to tell you how I think it's going to all play out. But let's go ahead and listen to a few of these news clips I have, and we'll dive into this here. And it looks like I got a comment from my new best friend. I hope I say your name right. Gerardo. I hope that's right. Hello, I just recently found your channel, and I can already tell that your content's good. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. If you're open to it, yeah, you're welcome to contact me if you have any questions, comments, whatever. I'm happy to chat with you, my friend. Thanks for being here. Thanks to everybody tuning into the channel. Let's go ahead and dive into this next video. If you have any questions or any questions you'd like me to answer for you, just go ahead and type it in to the comment bar. And again, there is a link that you can actually call in a question. You can just appear via the phone, as in just calling it in, or you can appear on camera with your camera phone if you like. It's whatever you guys would like to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first video, and we'll drill into it.
Joining me now is the Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy, Deputy National Security Advisor under Trump, and the author of the forthcoming book, The Battle for the Jewish State, How Israel and America Can Win. Victoria Coates back with us. Victoria, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Maria. Good to be with you.
Before we get to Israel, I want to get your take on the conflict on Ukraine and Russia. President Trump has said many times this war will be over before I even take office. And already you're seeing Russia, try to get Trump's attention, saying we want to reset. This was like sort of the messages coming from Russia. What are your thoughts on the latest upheaval yesterday with more fire emerging?
No, it's a curious situation in Ukraine because President Biden, apparently taken aback by the some 10,000 North Korean troops that are being deployed to Russia right now, decided to allow Ukraine for the first time in 2.5 years to use ATACMS and HIMARS, long-range U.S. missiles, to strike at Russia. The question is, why is this a good idea now? Why wasn't it a good idea 2 years ago when Ukraine had the advantage? Now it looks like we're kind of drifting towards World War III, as the president-elect has said, and as Don Jr. said, in a weird incremental way. So, I don't necessarily object to this move because I don't think Russia's been very sensitive to Ukraine's borders. But I want to know why now, and are we concerned by a potential Russian escalation, even a nuclear escalation coming in retaliation?
Well, I mean, would they do such a thing as Trump is readying to return to the White House?
Well, I mean, hopefully not. I think that Putin has signaled he knows there's going to be the new sheriff in town that he's used to dealing with, and I think it's worth repeating that the one president over the last three under whom Ukraine was not invaded was President Trump. And right. So hopefully Putin will, stay in his box a little bit, knowing Trump is coming back, knowing that there's going to be a strong hand on the American tiller. But, you worry that if you take an action like this kind of responsively, almost defensively, it could lead to escalation.
Sure. Meanwhile, President Biden is in Rio de Janeiro.
All right. So you kind of heard this particular commentator's take in relation to what's going on right now in Ukraine. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about that in just 1 second. I have one other video from this France 24 channel, and it's basically asking, what will Ukraine do with the long-range missiles now it's allowed to use them? And then I'm going to get into dissecting this with y'all, and I think I'll bring a little bit of maybe calm to the situation. At least you'll have a better understanding, I believe, as to what is going on in this area in the world. And you guys know how it is in life. It's not as black and white as they would like you to think it is. It's a complicated issue, but it is understandable. And I think I can explain it in a simple way that we can all understand, and we can talk about it. So let's get into this clip here.
Given into Ukrainian pleas for permission to use long-range American missiles against targets inside Russia. The U.S. president had.
And remember, if her language sounds a little funny or a little off, this is a French. It's a French. I can't even speak today. It's a French channel in France. It's called France 24.
Resisted Kiev's demands for months, with American officials worried about the danger of escalating the conflict with nuclear-armed Russia, as well as the risk of depleting its own stocks of the valuable munitions. The New York Times and the Washington Post, which first reported the news, said the shift came in response to North Korean troops being deployed alongside Russian soldiers in the Kursk border region. Well, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did not confirm the news, but said missiles would speak for themselves.
Today, there's a lot of talk in the media about us receiving permission for respective actions. But strikes are not carried out with words. Such things are not announced. Missiles will speak for themselves. They certainly will.
Well, for more on the significance of this announcement and its timing, I'm joined on set by our international affairs editor, Philip Tell. Philip, after months of pressure from Ukraine, why has this announcement come now?
Well, I think that there are several reasons that have pushed the American president to make this decision. First of all, there's been a lot of pressure on him from Ukraine itself, from Volodymyr Zelensky, to give the green light for these missiles to be used.
Okay, and on your screen, in case you're not familiar with this area of the world, you can see this highlighted area right here. Actually, this color right here, remember, I am colorblind, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, but this darker shade, is it red? I'm not sure, but this whole area right here is Ukraine. Right over here is Russia. All of this area over here on the right-hand side of the screen is Russia. But this is Ukraine right here, and then on the, as I'm facing the map, the left-hand side of the map, the other side of the map is Europe. And the shaded area inside Ukraine, down here at the bottom, that's what they call Crimea. Crimea is this bottom area which sticks into the Black Sea. But all of this shaded area right there is what is currently, as this key on this map shows you, under Russian control. There is a small area, I believe they call it the Donbass, up here in Russia. You'll see this little area. I got my marker on there right there, but that little area, which is actually a pretty good size area, as I said, Russia is a huge country. That is an area that's actually controlled by Ukraine, and Ukraine plans on keeping that area as a bargaining chip for future settlement discussions. And of course, it is literally like a thorn in the side of Putin. I believe that's what he is taking the bulk of these North Korean troops and is focusing on, trying to push out the Ukrainian soldiers from his area. So as of right now, as crazy as it is to believe, there is a part of Russia that is under occupation by a foreign adversary, and it's dangerous. There's no doubt about it. I mean, on one hand, it is kind of humorous. On the other hand, it's not humorous. It's very serious, and I'm sure Russia looks at it as something very serious. One final comment about this map, and I think this is positive on some level. Russia, when it took over Crimea, I believe it was 2014, 2015, it took it over by force. Remember, they had all these generic, non-marked military men showing up in Ukraine. They ordered the Ukrainian military to stay to their base and not leave. They violated many rules of war, if you will, by not having markings on their uniforms. And I'm talking about Russia. And they just kind of took it over. They just showed up one day and took it over without firing a shot, as far as I know. And it's been under Russian control ever since 2014, 2015. Now, Russia built a bridge between Russia, if you notice, between the Black Sea and this other large body of water, there is the land is not touching. And that's a problem when you're trying to supply the entire region of Crimea with supplies. Additionally, Ukraine also was cutting off the water that was flowing into this area. So they were really trying everything, the Ukrainians were, to push people out of Crimea, to push the Russians out of Crimea so they could take it back easily. Well, Russia decided a long time ago that they wanted to build what they call a land bridge from Russia all the way to Crimea. And as you see, if they're able to keep this territory, they will be able to reach that stated goal. They'll be joined with Crimea by land, and that bridge will not be such a vital link as it is right now. So, anyway, I hope that's clear. If not, put the question in the comments and I will clarify.
Far into Russian territory, especially in the Donbass region, to try to push the Russian forces back there. What these missiles are going to be used for is to attack munitions depots, areas where the army is gathering, purely to do with defending Ukraine, but not going to be fired, for example, at schools, hospitals, or residential areas. That's according to the rules that have been set up when it comes to combat, which of course have not been respected at all by the Russians when they've been firing missiles into Ukraine. The second point is, I think that the events over the past few days have convinced the US president that really there is absolutely no hope of negotiating any kind of deal with Vladimir Putin. He's not interested in going to the negotiating table unless he's able to keep hold of everything that he's already conquered in Ukraine, and that basically it's a waste of time. This phone call that happened between the German Chancellor Scholz and Vladimir Putin led to nothing. And I think there's a general feeling, even from the French president, Emmanuel Macron, that whatever you try to do to talk to Vladimir Putin, it's not going to get anywhere. The only thing that Vladimir Putin is going to take any notice of is if he gets a bloody nose. And that's why they've given the green light for these missiles to be used to be fired into Ukrainian territory. It just, I think, depends now on how this is going to take place, where these missiles are going to be used for. And one other point which was brought up in that report is that I think there's concern about the fact that there are these thousands of North Korean troops that have been drafted into Russia to try to push back Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region in northeastern Russia, that also the time has come maybe to be able to use these long-range missiles to try to stop them.
Yeah, I agree completely with most of his assessment right there. Okay, so let's break this down and let's talk about this. And I can explain at least my thoughts on what was brought up by American Nana, which basically is, what are they going to do with these missiles now that the Biden-Harris administration has authorized these missiles to actually be used in Russia up to a certain 150, 200-mile area? As you heard this guy said, there's restrictions. You can't bomb hospitals. It has to be legitimate military targets. And straight up, the fact is that the rules of war, can you believe that there's something called rules of war? You have to follow rules of war, and you cannot bomb hospitals and things like that under these rules of war in most situations, I probably should add. So why did Biden allow these missiles? Why did he change? Well, my opinion is he has changed his mind simply, and I would say the main thing is because the war has changed. Putin has changed. And what has he done? He's brought in, depending on what report you believe, anywhere from 10 to 15,000 North Korean soldiers. He's been training them, getting them acclimated to the Russian army, and he has deployed them. I believe they're going to focus on this region right here. You see this lighter region? I think it's maybe yellow. The key says it's accessed Ukrainian gains. This is inside Russia, ladies and gentlemen. This is Russian territory that is controlled by the country of Ukraine. It's really shocking when you think about it. You have Russia, a country as powerful as Russia because of all of the nuclear weapons they possess, and they have control of a piece of Russia. It's kind of shocking. So they're going to use, in my opinion, these weapons to take out some of these North Korean troops, to level the playing field, to attack oil storage places, the weapons, the storage facilities inside Russia that are considered up till now a safe place to store their munitions. Well, now they can be accessed because the United States, the Biden-Harris administration, has said they can use these weapons. Now, my personal opinion, they should have done this a long time ago. And I know that this may be shocking for some of my regular viewers, but if you're going to do something and you're going to be aggressive and you're going to put Putin in check, Putin only understands one thing. He understands pure aggression. He understands and respects power. That's it. End of story. If he views you like he does Biden and the Harris administration as weak, as feeble, as inept, as lacking a spine, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You're going to be taken advantage of. I mean, it's really just that simple. And we're seeing the consequences of what happens in the world when you have a weak and feckless leader like we have in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's just that simple. Look at the war now going on in Israel between Hamas and Hezbollah. You have, of course, this Ukraine-Russia war going on. You have a world that is on fire, and this is a consequence, a direct consequence of what happens when you have a president that is inept. It's just that simple. So how did we get here? Well, let me explain something to you. We've talked about this before, but I want everybody to understand this. This country of Ukraine, this is huge. When you look at it on a map, say compared to the size of Russia and compared to Europe, it doesn't look that big. My understanding is this country is bigger than Texas. And I don't know if you've been to the state of Texas. That's a big, big state. It is huge. I was driving to Houston one time from Phoenix, Arizona, and we made good time. I was flying all day. We went through southern Arizona. We quickly got into New Mexico. Wasn't long after that, I was in El Paso, and man, I just let it go, pedal to the metal. I just flying straight down Highway 4. Just go, driving all day. I mean, it was the metal, pedal to the metal, right? As they say, just pushing it for everything I got. And I drove, fueled up and drove. And then it was getting kind of later in the night, and I pulled up on a sign that said Houston, 500 more miles. I like to fell off the road. I mean, it is that big. I believe the state of Texas, if you turned it on the side this way, it'd be in the Pacific Ocean. If you turn it the other way, it'd be well into the Atlantic Ocean. It is a huge state. Same thing with Ukraine. It's a big, big place. And that's one of the many reasons Russia is having a hard time dealing with Ukraine. In addition to the fact that Russia itself is having a population crisis, something else we've talked extensively about on this channel. There is a population decrease, a population problem all over the world, except maybe portions of Africa. But Japan, Russia, a lot of countries, especially China, they're going to have a terrible population decrease that's already causing problems now and is definitely going to cause problems in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It's a major situation. Russia, for example, they need 1.1 to 1.2 million troops just to repel their borders. That's how big the country of Russia is, and they're having a hard time keeping that many people in the Russian military, especially with the way that they're going through their men right now. I believe Russia has lost double the men that Ukraine has, but as of now, Ukraine has lost about as many men as America did in the Vietnam War. So this is a very bloody, very costly war for everyone that's involved in this nasty war. Now, how did we get here? We got here because, in my humble opinion, of NATO. And the short answer is this. NATO has been on this expansion crusade for quite some time. It's been wanting to expand. It wants to bring in countries into the fold, if you will. Well, Russia, even back in the 90s, was very clear with the United States, and I'll have a video on this next time we meet so we can dive into this even deeper. Russia was promised there would be no more expansion of NATO. They got rid of what was called the Warsaw Pact at that time. This is, again, going back into the late 80s and the 90s. They were promised no more expansion. Not going to happen. Don't worry about it. Yet the United States allowed a ton of more countries into NATO. I believe in 2004, there was 3 or 4 plus countries added to NATO, and it just kept angering Russia. And you can understand why that would anger them. You got this huge military pact right up against your border. Now you had a situation where the people in Ukraine were effectively seeking NATO membership into NATO. And Russia was like, this is not going to happen. We're not going to allow this to happen. And I know what you're thinking, because I've had people tell me this. They're like, well, can't free people decide their own direction in life? Sure they can, but they can spend their own money, their own blood, their own treasure doing it, not the treasure and resources of the United States or the rest of the world, especially of NATO, for that matter. That's just the way I see it. And you got to understand one more thing. That is the relationship between Ukraine and Russia. It is a close relationship. It's only been 30 years since Ukraine has been a quote unquote independent country. I have explained it this way on this channel many times, and I'll explain it again. Imagine if the state of Texas was to break away from the United States, and as just a matter of interest, Texas does have it in their agreement when they joined the United States that Texas could withdraw from the Union under certain conditions if they had a vote and a certain amount of people agreed to it. Now, that's a whole other story as to whether or not the United States would allow that to happen, even though they technically have that right. I don't see that ever happening, but technically speaking, it's theoretically something that can happen. So imagine Texas as an independent country of Texas. So the United States is no longer the 48 contiguous states; it's the 47 contiguous states here on the main homeland. Imagine now if the new country of Texas wanted, closer ties with Russia, kind of like Venezuela and Cuba have been doing slowly. Very similar to the Cuban Missile Crisis, to be perfectly direct about it. Imagine if Russia started sending a bunch of resources, bombs. Imagine if the state of Texas said, Russia, we want to be part of the Warsaw Pact. We want to be in a military agreement with you for our protection. The United States would not allow that, to be blunt about it. The United States would do exactly what Russia has done, and they would invade the state of Texas, the country of Texas, I should say, to put a stop to that. Just like Texas is very close and dear and part of the United States, Ukraine is the same way to Russia. As a matter of fact, you remember the leader Mikhail Gorbachev, his mom and dad, one was Ukrainian, one was Russian. I think his mother was Ukrainian. He stated that when he was put to bed as a child, his mother would sing Ukrainian lullabies to him. So I just want to emphasize how close these countries have always been. As a matter of fact, before this terrible war started, I remember the press reports of people that were being interviewed in Ukraine, and they're like, oh, there's no way Russia would ever invade Ukraine. We're the same people. And of course, unfortunately, that never happened. But folks, listen to me. They were warned a long time ago by Putin, do not do this. Stop expanding NATO. Stop it. No more. And I mean, his back was against the wall when you get right down to it. Are you going to allow America to come right up to your border? And I forgot how many miles of border Ukraine shares with Russia, but it's substantial. As another insult to Putin, Finland, who has been on the fence with Russia as far as joining NATO, decided to go ahead and join NATO after Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia's very angry about that because that's another 800, 900 miles of additional border they now have to secure between Russia and Finland. So Russia is in a very tough spot, and the United States has a lot to do with it. And before I get any hate mail or hate letters or whatever, I love our country. I'm an American. I bleed red, white, and blue. Trust me on this. I love our country. I have nothing bad to say about our country. But the facts are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a situation where just some crazy man then said, I'm going to invade Ukraine. There's a reason for it. And if you put yourself in the shoes of your enemy, you can kind of see and have empathy, if you will, as to what is going on and why they're doing what they're doing. Don't believe this indoctrination that we hear in the news that this guy's a bad guy, this guy's terrible. It had nothing to do with the United States. He just did it because that's what Russia does. That's a lie. That's not true. And thank God we have a president and President-elect Donald Trump that knows you have to talk to your enemies. You have to sit down at the table and break bread with them, just like Jesus would do. Sit down, break bread, have a meeting, have a discussion. That's what is important. You have to essentially walk in the shoes of your enemy and try to find a solution to this. Now, American Ann, I know you said you were worried about this, and you know what? We have to worry about it on some level. But then again, there's nothing that we can really do about the situation. We can talk about it, like at a forum like this, and discuss what's going on. But we just have to be prayerful about it. And we just have to go on with our lives, understanding what is going on and not allowing indoctrination to take a root into our brains and essentially allowing this so-called mainstream media to continually lie to us and to vilify Donald Trump for sitting down with our enemies and trying to discuss and work out a solution. Now, moving on to how I think this can be solved, I think it can be solved, and I think it can be solved this way. The territories that are in this red or whatever color this is, the settlement can be simple. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see so much fighting going on right now. They know negotiations are coming soon with Donald Trump and his Secretary of State and his team, whatever. So they want to put themselves in the best position possible for negotiations right now. And that's the reason why you see so much fighting, such a flurry of activity and tons of bombs and hundreds of bombs being launched. And you have all these drones being fired. They want to get the upper hand and grab as much as territory as possible so they have it as a bargaining chip. That's the reason why in this little section up here that is controlled by Ukraine, I think they call that the Donbass region, as I said earlier. They want to maintain that and hold that because the Ukrainians think they can trade that, for example, for something like Crimea. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear about something. Russia is not going to lose. That's not going to happen. It's Russia. They have the largest, the biggest nuclear force on the face of the earth, even bigger than the United States. Now, it's kind of semantics because it depends on exactly what munitions they have and how do you classify it. The United States has plenty of nuclear weapons. Don't make any mistake about it. But what I'm telling you is that Russia's not going to lose. That's just not going to happen. Having said that, Russia does not want to keep sending their men to have them die. They don't want to be in a situation where their country becomes bankrupt or is unable to feed their own population. That would be the risk, in my opinion, for Putin, is where you get a country that simply rises up against him and takes him out. That would be the real risk in my mind if he pushed it too far. On the other side, you have Zelensky running Ukraine right now, and he's got a lot of flaws to him. A lot of negative things I can say about the man, but you have to admit, at the beginning of the war, this guy was the picture of bravery. That was pretty brave. I didn't know much about him at the time, but you had Joe Biden call him up and saying, hey, I can get you out of there. I can send you a ride. And he said, Mr. President, I don't need a ride. I need a bullet. And I said, that's some cojones, if you want my opinion. I think that's pretty respectful. I think that's a pretty manly answer. That's the answer of a leader. And I think that he should be commended for that, to be perfectly honest with you. So how does the United States settle this? It's real simple. He tells Russia, you keep what you got, period. It's yours. It's part of Russia. We're going to build like a demarcation line, kind of like what we have in North Korea right now. You know how you have the DMZ zone right there? Was that the 35th parallel? Something like that would be created where there would be a DMZ zone of some sort, where it's a no man's land. It's just a buffer. And we would probably give assurances to Russia that Ukraine will be neutral. It won't be Russian. It won't be part of NATO. Something like that could probably be worked out. Now, what if Zelensky doesn't agree to this? Well, it's real simple. Donald Trump says, no more munitions for you. No more aid. eventually he's going to have to come to the table. Same thing with Russia. What if Russia says, hell no, we want all of Ukraine? Well, that's a little more problematic, but the bottom line there is you escalate to de-escalate. And what that means is you build up Ukraine extremely strong, like a factor of 10, a factor of 20, whatever it takes. You make sure they have the munitions and tools, the missiles, to where they can just blow the living hell out of Russia all the way back into their country. That's effectively what would have to happen. And both scenarios, especially the latter, is extremely dangerous. And yes, there is a risk of a world war. But at the same time, I don't think Russia wants to risk a true nuclear war with the United States. There are no winners in a nuclear exchange. And the United States, along with its NATO allies, has enough munitions to effectively go in there short of nuclear weapons and push Russia back. That probably could be done. Again, extremely dangerous. We just have to hope and pray that cooler heads can prevail and that some type of truce can be ironed out, because there is really no winners in this entire situation. And I understand both sides of the argument, and I hope I've shed a little bit of light on this for y'all. I think I've pretty well covered what I wanted to say on that. Let me turn to the comments real quick and make sure that I have I address any concerns or any questions. I see that we've had a lot of comments on here. Okay, let me go through this real quick. Okay, American Nana, you do not like Zelensky. I get that. Yeah, I'm sure he's got his flaws. I'm sure he's not the best guy in the world, and I do feel bad for the people of Ukraine. My buddy Sapphire, thank you for being here. Glad you could show up and be part of the conversation. My views is if Ukraine wants our weapons, they can buy them. I think that's good. They can buy them too, but I think at this point they're going to be looking to solve the problem. I don't think we're looking for more military arms sales, at least at this point. In the future, maybe. But you can give them all the weapons that you want or loan them to them. If the country falls, you're not going to get paid back on it either way. So let's say, yeah, okay, east to west Texas is 1,600 miles and 1,000. Yeah, it's huge. It is absolutely huge. That is a big country. I lived in Texas for years. I grew up there as a kid in Houston. It's a good place. I love Texas. To live in Texas means you're a proud Texan, and I have always been a proud Texan. Now I'm more like, what is that, Matt Gaetz? I'm a Florida man now, but I definitely love Texas, and I enjoy going back to visit family and friends. American Anna, it was Russian land to be. That's exactly right. Ukraine was part of Russia. Absolutely. It was Ukrainian land, says Sapphire. And it was a country, was within the former USSR. Russia wants the red areas so they can isolate Ukraine from the West. Yeah, I think I agree with most of that. It actually originally, and of course, it depends how far back you go, but they have a long history as part of Russia. They've only been independent since, I believe, the 1990s, but I can't argue with facts I actually don't know. So in other words, I don't know what it was technically 1,000 years ago, for example, but I know they have a long history together. And as far as modern history goes, it's always been part of Russia. And if I'm wrong on that, you're welcome to point that out to me. All right, American Anna, well, it's gotten to the point, sell it, but no more money. We're in trouble ourselves. I agree with you, American Anna. The problem is this fuse has already been lit. So by my estimation, it sounds good to just walk away. To hell with it. We're washing our hands of it. Adios. We're done. The problem with that is if we actually did that right now, then Ukraine would fall. And then you'd have Russia coming right up against NATO in Europe. And that would definitely not be a good thing. It's kind of like this. It's been broke by the Biden administration, and now it has to be fixed. Unfortunately, that is the reality. And I'll tell you one other thing. I am like Trump in a lot of ways. I think taking care of our own is great. But if you look back at our history, especially recent American history in the last 100 years or so, every time the United States has been a truly isolationist type of country, it's always led to a world war. Always does. That doesn't mean we have to be involved in anything and everything all the time. But my friends, I'm going to tell you, if we completely isolate ourselves, the world just goes to hell. It just absolutely does. Now, that doesn't mean we have to give as much as we've been giving. I'm sure there is a sweet spot. But every time the United States fails to stand up and lead the world, it has always led to a world war, World War I and World War II. United States, it just has to lead the world on some level. It's almost like a Spider-Man movie, folks. With great power comes great responsibility. It is absolutely true. And if we don't step up and meet that void, meet that situation, then you're going to have what you see going on with China, where they're over in Peru building new ports. I used to go to Costa Rica for a vacation and stuff. They gave the Costa Rican government, China came in and built the people there as a gift, a huge coliseum of some sort. They're not doing that because the Chinese government are good people. They're doing that to buy influence. And a lot of times what they do is they go in and they build these ports for certain countries and certain governments. But unlike the United States that generally says, hey, this is a gift to the people of your country, so to speak. China's not like that. China says, no, you owe us. And what always happens, especially like in Africa, some of these poorer countries, they can never pay that back. It just never works. Like it's kind of like the loan shark that you see on television. Oh, you need some money to get through the week? Sure. You know, the interest rate is this. They can never pay that back, and they're in debt always. And that's exactly the way China operates. And we just don't want that. So what I'm trying to tell you is it's, in my estimation, it's not always as black and white as we like to make it. Unfortunately, there are certain grayer areas. I do know right from wrong. I mean, it's not difficult for me. I know what's good. I know what's bad. But when it comes to these type of topics, they get a little more complicated, unfortunately. And we have to free our mind, and we have to think about this from all sides and all angles. It would be nice to say, hey, we got poor people here. They need food. We need to take care of our own. I get that. I agree with that. It sounds good. It's needed. But generally in my life, I could say that I have come to the opinion that we need to find a balance point. We need to find a balance point to where we take care of our own, but we do have this great responsibility in the world. I personally think one of the reasons the United States is such a prosperous and great, and unlike these woke people try to always tell us, the United States is a good country. I believe the fact that we bless the world blesses us. I think the fact that we bless Israel blesses us. The Bible says so. So it's for all them reasons there, that's what I submit. And you can agree or disagree. I get it. You don't always have to agree with me, and I'm not always right. But that's just the way I see it, and you can form your own opinion, which is what I'm all about on this channel. What am I about? I'm all about ending that indoctrination. If I stand for anything, I stand for you guys get the information. Here's what I think. Let me know what you think, and then we can make up our minds. And if we don't agree, it's okay. We continue to move on. But that's what I'm here for. That's why I do this. That's the reason why I show up and have these chats with you. I want us all to live our best life possible by understanding the world that we live in. It's really that simple. Yeah, no more cash. Sounds good to me. My cousin's husband's from Ukraine. Yes. There's a lot of Ukrainians here in the United States. American Ann, I got you, JR. I feel like a parent with a 40-year-old in the basement. Yes, that's a good way to put it, American Ann. And actually, that comment makes me feel good. American Anna, is that we can have a conversation and maybe perhaps you understand something more than when you first started the conversation. And again, like I tell you, I'm not always 100% right. So take what I've said, Google it, research it, ask AI, and see what they tell you pertaining to whatever subject you might want more information. I think that's the best way to get to the truth and to get to the information that we need. Does that make sense to everybody? I think that answers everybody's question on there. Yes, American first doesn't mean abandon the world. I like the way you said that, Sapphire. That I fully and completely agree with. I think that's a great way to put that. And another topic, or I should say another time, I'm going to explain to you a little more in some of the potential peace plans that are out there, that have other options for peace, and just some other takes on what I just said that I think would potentially benefit us all pertaining to that. I wanted to also go over for a second. I wanted to see, our time should allow. I don't want to go too much longer. I try to always keep everything in the power hour, but here's what I'll do. I'll bring it up in our next conversation. I don't know if that's going to be later tonight or tomorrow, but I want to talk openly about information pertaining. I can share this one thing with y'all right here. I want to talk about information pertaining to these January 6th hostages. There are people that have just been sentenced today, believe it or not. I believe there's a man. Let me look at my sources here. There's a man from, let's see, there is a man from Missouri who was just sentenced for January 6th Capitol breach. Oh, I like the way they say it, January 6th Capitol breach. And that's dated November 18th, so that is today. And then an Alabama man, and this is a press release from the United States Attorney's Office, and an Alabama man was sentenced today. It's just really shocking that they're still persecuting, in my estimation, these people. Additionally, they just had another individual arrested, a former NFL Georgia Southern player in Savannah, arrested on J6 charges due in D.C. court this week. And then finally, you have a report by CNN that there is actually a judge that has put some of this stuff on hold pertaining to the J6 individuals in his court. They expect pardons from President-elect Trump. They expect pardons, which I think is fantastic news. And let's hope that pans out, and that we can put a stop to all this lawfare and all this craziness. We all know what happened on J6. And I have to be careful what I say. Remember, I told you YouTube is not a truly free speech zone, so I have to be respectful of their rules. Hopefully something can be done about that in the government at some point in the future. But since we've been on for a little bit over the power hour that I try to keep it at, I will save that for our next conversation. Make sure you all keep your alerts on with YouTube. The good news is whenever I go live, you'll be the first to know about it, and then you can join our conversation. I do appreciate everybody taking time to join the J.R. Dukes Power Hour featuring the Dukes feed. We didn't get much of the feed done today, but sometimes time does not allow for that. I appreciate all my friends being here with me. Special shout out to American Nana, my friend Mark at the Sapphire Ridge News. If y'all have not checked out his channel, he's got a great summary that he gives on a lot of the current cases pertaining to legal affairs and just general court cases that are out there right now. I think right now he is paying particular attention to the YSL trial by sweet Fannie Willis out of Fulton County, Georgia. We just loves Fannie's Fannie, right? So she's been reelected, so we'll have another few years to talk about her, I guess. Thanks for my new friend joining us today, Garado. I hope I say your name right. I'm terrible with names, folks. I apologize ahead of time. So if I missed your name on there, sorry about that. But it's always a pleasure to have everybody join me. I don't take it for granted that I have all these followers on the X platform. Reach out and chat with me. It's really nice. I think I just broke 500 and some followers on the X platform. It's a newer platform for me, but I'm really appreciative of all the support on there. I want to put certain things on the X platform because of their free speech application. I don't have to worry about getting slapped by anybody on YouTube for something that may come out of my mouth. You never know what's going to come out of my mouth, but I always try to tell you exactly what I think and exactly how I see something, whether it's wrong, whether it's not. At least you'll know where I stand. And I'm always appreciative to my friend over on Twitch. I think I know who you are, but hello. And then, of course, on YouTube. You guys are my family. We've got a nice little family right here, and I appreciate each and every one of you. We're definitely going to talk more about the J6. You're right, American Anna, that J6 special on Epoch. I think that's how you say Epoch Times. Man, they have a great channel over there. Simon, or that, who is that? I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name, but whoever does the main hosting over there, the guy's entertaining. He does a lot. And God bless you, American Nana, Sapphire. I appreciate all y'all. Listen, may the May the Lord have his special anointing on each and every one of you and your family, and may your families be blessed as a result of our Lord's favor. May God always bless America. I always tell you, my friends, keep your mind free. Never give up. Until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.